My name's Jake, and I want to share a story I once heard from a close friend of mine, Tom. Tom isn't the kind of person who makes things up or exaggerates to get attention. He's always been calm, collected, sometimes even too rational. But that night, when he told me what had happened, his hands were trembling and the look in his eyes. It was the look of someone who had seen something he would never forget. Tom worked the night shift at a small gas station about 20 miles west of the city. The station was old, with a faded sign and 2 gas pumps that looked more like museum pieces than machines that still worked. There was also a small roadside motel next to it. The only reason the station was still in business was because it sat along the highway where truck drivers often stopped to rest, sleep, or take a shower. But that night, there were almost no customers. Just a couple of cars stopped around 9, a quick fill-up, and they were gone. After that, silence. By 9:30, Tom figured the rest of the night would pass quietly. He sat at the counter, flipping through old magazines and sipping cold coffee, watching the pale glow of the streetlights stretch across the empty lot surrounding the station. Then, the phone rang. Tom jumped so hard he spilled coffee on his jeans. The sound was sharp, unpleasantly loud in the stillness. It came from the back wall where an old landline phone hung. The thing was, that phone hadn't worked in years. The line had been disconnected long ago, and the receiver was just there as decoration, a relic from the past. At first, Tom didn't move, thinking he must have imagined it. But the ringing came again. He stood up, confusion in his eyes. How could that phone ring if it wasn't even connected? It kept ringing, again and again. Finally, he gathered his courage, walked over, and picked up the receiver. There was noise on the line, a sharp, crackling hiss, like an old radio searching for a signal. And through the static, a voice broke through, muffled, distorted. "Don't go outside, no matter what happens." A pause, the static grew louder. Then again, the same voice, sharper this time. "Don't go outside, no matter what happens." Tom froze, still holding the receiver. He thought maybe it was a prank, one of his coworkers trying to mess with him. He checked the cord. It hung loosely from the wall, the end cleanly cut. The phone wasn't connected to anything. The thought raced through his mind again. How could it ring? And whose voice was that? Then, for the third time, the voice came through. "Don't go outside." A faint crackle, then silence. The call ended. Tom stood still, not sure what to do. He hadn't even processed what just happened when he noticed headlights on the highway. A car was coming. At first, it looked ordinary, like dozens of cars that passed that stretch of road every night. But within seconds, it was clear. The vehicle was moving too fast. Way too fast for the narrow exit leading to the gas pumps. The headlights swung wildly across the road, the glass, the pumps. Tom stepped back from the window, his heart pounding. Then came the screech of tires, desperate and hopeless. The car shot into the lot and crashed straight into one of the gas pumps. The impact was so strong that the glass doors rattled, and the pump was ripped several feet from its base. Tom grabbed the counter to keep his balance. For a few seconds, there was only dead silence. Then came the grinding of metal, followed by a faint groan. His first instinct was to run outside and help, but the words from the phone echoed in his head. "Don't go outside, no matter what happens." They sounded like a warning, holding him in place. He hesitated, then grabbed a flashlight and a fire extinguisher. As soon as he stepped outside, he was hit by the heavy smell of gasoline. The car, a dark sedan, was badly damaged. The windshield was shattered, the metal twisted, smoke rising from under the bent hood. The driver was slumped over the steering wheel. Tom took another step toward the car and saw gasoline spreading across the pavement, thin streams running toward the sparking wires of a broken lamppost. Another second, and it could all ignite. A moment later, flames erupted. The explosion shook the ground and shattered part of the windows. Fire engulfed the car, and a massive fireball shot into the air. The blast knocked Tom off his feet. If he had been any closer, he wouldn't have survived. He got up, pulled out his cell phone, and called the police and fire department. Then he sat down in the corner, unable to move. By the time the rescuers arrived, everything was already burning out. All that was left of the car was a charred frame. No one could explain why the car had crashed into the station. Some thought it might have been a heart attack, others, a mechanical failure. But one question kept haunting Tom: who called him? Whose voice had that been? To this day, whenever we talk about it, Tom always says the same thing. "I heard that voice, Jake. It saved my life, but I still don't know who it was. Maybe my guardian angel." He never worked nights again, and even now, whenever a phone rings, any phone, he still flinches. I own a small store in a town in Northern California. My name is Dylan Mercer. I'm 37 years old. I've been working here for more than 10 years. It's an ordinary store: groceries, coffee, a few household items. We close every evening at 9. There's a back door that opens to a small yard with parking spaces and dumpsters. That's the door we use to take out the trash and receive deliveries. It's heavy, made of metal, and locks from the inside. A few weeks ago, when I came in one morning and tried to open it, the metal scraped and barely moved. When I stepped outside, I saw the door was dented and bent. Someone had tried to break in, but either failed or ran out of time. I called the police. They came, looked over the door, filed a report, and left, advising me to install an alarm system. The next night, around 2 in the morning, I was driving home from a friend's place and decided to stop by the store to make sure everything was fine. I parked on the street, walked between 2 buildings to the back lot, turned the corner, and saw the small parking area. It was dark. Only the weak light above the back door cast a dim glow. I didn't notice it right away. A dark figure was crouched near the door, metal scraping softly. I stopped and crouched down myself, my mind racing. What should I do? I decided I had to stop him. Maybe not the smartest choice, but I stood up and shouted. To my surprise, he didn't drop everything and run. He froze for a second, then slowly turned toward me. I couldn't see his face. He dropped something metallic that hit the ground with a dull clink. For a few seconds, he just stood there. Then I saw him reach into his jacket and raise his hand. In it was a huge knife. The blade flashed in the light. I knew I couldn't win that fight. I pulled out my phone, dialed 911, and started backing away carefully. The stranger began walking toward me, slow and deliberate. I didn't wait. I turned and ran as fast as I could. Within a minute, I reached my car, jumped in, started the engine, and drove about 400 feet before stopping to look back. No one. The police arrived about 15 minutes later. I told them everything. They walked to the back of the store, but of course he was gone. No prints, no signs. The next day, I heard from a friend that someone had robbed a store on the next street, then another one after that. I realized this wasn't just some thief who'd run if caught. This was someone who would attack. That thought made my skin crawl, because I always closed up alone at 9 when it was already dark. I often went out back before closing to throw away the trash, and the idea of meeting him there scared me. Some time passed and the robberies stopped. I figured it was over, just some guy passing through stealing what he could before moving on. But I was wrong. One evening, I closed the register, cleaned up, gathered the trash, and headed for the back door to throw it out. I opened the door, walked to the dumpster, tossed the bag in, and felt a hard blow to the back of my head. Everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the ground by the dumpster. I looked at my watch. It was about 10. I'd been out for almost an hour. My head was pounding, my ears ringing, nausea rising. Clear signs of a bad concussion. I checked my pocket. Surprisingly, my phone was still there. I called 911. Police and paramedics arrived, helped me, and took me to the hospital where I spent the next few days. Later, I learned that the attacker had taken the store's weekly earnings and everything else he could carry. When I recovered, I went back to work, though I shortened the hours. Now I close an hour earlier, and I only take the trash out in the morning. They never found the man who attacked me. I never believed in ghosts or anything supernatural. I always considered myself a rational person, committed to logic even in the strangest situations. That's why I liked working as a night cashier in a 24-hour store on the outskirts of the city. It was quiet, few customers, everything predictable. But one night, everything I believed in collapsed. My name is Mark. This story happened in the middle of autumn. It was around 2 in the morning when the store door opened and a boy walked in. He looked about 8 or 9 years old. Small, thin, wearing a light t-shirt and jeans, his dark hair messy. On his feet were sneakers that seemed a little too big for him. He didn't say a word, just went straight to the candy shelf. I watched him in surprise. Middle of the night, empty street, and a child walking alone. But he seemed calm. He picked up a chocolate bar and a soda, placed them on the counter. His eyes looked empty, calm, as if he was looking right through me. "Hey," I said carefully, "are you alone? Where are your parents?" He didn't answer. He just handed me a couple of crumpled bills. I rang up his purchase. He took his candy and soda and quietly left. The door closed behind him, and the store fell silent again. I tried to explain that strange late-night visit to myself. Maybe he was a neighbor's kid who snuck out of the house at night. But something about the way he acted was too strange. No emotion, no fear. He was too calm. A few hours later, it happened again. The door opened and the same boy walked in. This time, he picked up a bag of chips and a bottle of water. Again, he paid silently and left. I couldn't resist and went outside after him. But the street was empty. Only the glow of the street lights reflected off the wet asphalt. Strangely, the boy was nowhere to be seen. Around 5 in the morning, he came in for the 3rd time. I was on edge by then, my hands trembling. "Hey, you can't wander around here alone at night," I said, louder than I meant to. "Where are your parents? Where do you live?" The boy looked up at me. His eyes were blank. I felt a chill pierce through me, as if the temperature in the store had suddenly dropped by 10 degrees. He took his things and left. I didn't dare follow him again. The next morning, I told one of our regular customers, an elderly woman who came in every day for milk and a newspaper, about the strange boy. She looked at me intently, her face instantly turning pale. "What did he look like?" she asked quietly. I described him. A t-shirt, jeans, sneakers, dark hair. She covered her mouth with her hand and slowly shook her head. "Mark, that boy died 6 months ago. He was hit by a car right at the intersection near the store. It was late at night. He was walking home and crossing the street." I felt my breath catch. "No, that's impossible," I muttered. "I saw him." He came to me 3 times that night. His family lived across the street, the woman continued softly. After the tragedy, they moved away. But I remember him. I remember him very well. I fell silent. My throat tightened and my hands were shaking. The rest of the day passed in a fog. I didn't know what to think. Maybe it was a coincidence, another boy who looked just like him. The next evening, I was back on shift, and again, after 2 in the morning, the door creaked open. I looked up, and there he was. The boy went to the candy shelf again, picked up a chocolate bar, then a soda, walked to the counter, and placed them down. "Why do you keep coming here?" I whispered. He didn't answer, but this time he looked at me again. His gaze lingered longer than before. There was no anger in it, more like sadness. Or maybe a plea. He placed the same crumpled bills on the counter, took his things, and left. I didn't follow him. I just stood there, watching the door close behind him. It's been several months since then. I don't work night shifts anymore. I asked to be moved to days. Later, I asked my coworkers who still work nights if they'd ever seen the boy. None of them had. It seems he only came during my shifts. Maybe he wanted to tell me something but couldn't. Or maybe he was trying to warn me.